Hey guys, I'm Janet on occasion, and today we are going with some patch notes because, well, there's plenty, and I'm sure if you guys have been watching any of my videos, you've noticed I'm constantly checking and double-checking various little bits and bobs because there's a lot that has changed, and we didn't get patch notes, which is annoying. They just couldn't get us the patch notes, all us content creators, up until, you know, this, when it went public, basically. This is the earliest they managed to get them together, just because there are so many. Yeah, if you look at the bar here, yeah. Actually, you probably can't see it because I've zoomed in. There's like a billion pages. There's a billion pages. I mean, some of it's Chinese, but still, like, there's a billion pages. So, yes, there's also a video here, which I'll link in the description, which Creative Assembly have published. Just a little breakdown of the key points, which is well worth a watch if you just want a cursory thing. But if you want the deep dive, then this video series, probably. There are so many. I'm going to be splitting this up over several videos, no doubt. I'm going to be cutting after every section, and yeah, well, I don't know how many videos it's going to be, because I don't know how many sections there are. There's just so much, I'm just going to get straight into it, and we can start discussing the changes, which is very fun. So, awful lot to do. So, yeah, it's called the Total WAAAAAAGH update, which is brilliant. Love that. Brilliant. Just, yep, it's about time. And, yes, so it's an automatic update, obviously, that comes alongside the DLC, so there's, you know, all the patch notes, that'll be free stuff, okay? This is affecting everybody, whether you have the Warden and the Paunch or not, as is the case with every single update that Creative Assembly do. It's always, you know, the stuff is in the game whether you own it or not, so all of the balance changes, etc. are in the game whether you've bought the expansion or not, right? So, all good. So, straight away, right, Call to WAAAAAAGH. Big deal. So the old WAAAAAAAGH mechanics, where a Greenskins army would hit peak fightiness and spawn a second AI-controlled companion army, are gone for good. A WAAAAAAGH is now a huge faction-wide event which mirrors those of Legend. A WAAAAAAGH is now something players can strategize and plan around, where expertise nets you bigger rewards and bigger nets you bigger rewards the bigger the challenge. You now have full control over all aspects of the WAAAAAAGH. So this you can check out my Azhag campaign or Grom campaign. There's plenty of examples of WAAAAAAGH in action, but let's break it down here too. So reputation is the resource that triggers the WAAAAAAGH event. So Greenskins now have a faction-wide resource called Reputation. Reputation is generated by fighting battles. Hard-fought defeats grant more reputation than easy victories, which is pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So even if you lose, if it's a hell of a fight, you're still going to get rewarded more. And I just think that is so Greenskin. That is perfect. You know, that is perfect. Just killing some chump, who cares? But, you know, almost defeating a massive, like, thing we totally outnumbered. Great, I love that. So reputation does not deteriorate, which is, again, lovely to hear, and builds up to a maximum value of 100. From 0 to 100, the reputation meter will affect the faction. The more reputation you get, the more bonuses your faction get. So this includes things like public order and growth and stuff like that. It's basically people are more happy being in your faction, and also more people want to be in it. So it's pretty cool. So once 100 reputation is reached, a call to WAAAAAAGH can be triggered by the player. So you can just sit on the bonuses, if you like, or you can call the WAAAAAAGH. So pretty nice that you get that sort of, you know, that kind of choice. So, Call to WAAAAAAGH. When a player hits 100 reputation, a Call to WAAAAAAGH button becomes available. Clicking this allows you to target an enemy faction's capital city. You then choose between following either Gork or Mork, who grant you specific benefits for the duration of the Call to WAAAAAAGH. When a Call to WAAAAAAGH is called, all owned armies will get additional mobs attached to them that will be filled with units up to a number of units at the primary army at that point. So, if you have a 20 stack and you call a WAAAAAAGH, that 20 stack will have a 20 stack of WAAAAAAAGH units. Whereas if there's only, you know, 17, you'll get 17, right? That's how that works. So mobs are populated with appropriate units for the region, as well as specific units according to the faction leader. So certain faction leaders have more of a more disposed towards having certain units. Grom the Paunch, for instance, you're more likely to get snotling pump wagons in your WAAAAAAGH armies. So very cool, or WAAAAAAAmies, as I like to call them. So that's really cool, but also the region. So if you're in forest, you're more likely to get spider units. If you're in the mountains, you're more likely to get squig units, stuff like that, which is really cool. I think it's really fun. So the new WAAAAAAGH battle ability. So yes, there's the WAAAAAAGH campaign ability that we've talked about, but there's also the battle ability. Is upgraded to be a more powerful version during a Call to WAAAAAAGH, which is nice. The Call to WAAAAAAGH has a set duration, so it's 20 turns. Currently, in the current build I've got, I'm sure that's staying. It seems fine. At 20. Success is achieved if the target capital is player occupied at the end of the Call to WAAAAAGH duration, or It's weird with the fact that WAAAAAGH always has an exclamation mark, because that's mid-sentence. But it reads like the end of a sentence. How annoying is that? Anyway. The Call to WAAAAAGH duration, or raised during the Call to WAAAAAGH. So basically you pick. You pick a faction, and it's their capital that you must destroy. Or occupy. But either way, at the end of those 20 turns, you have to have owned it, or it has to be in ruins. If it's, if it gets retaken by the people that you're attacking, then they're going to get it back. So, yes, you might want to take it straight away, but also you might want to take it later, so that way you're not having to just sort of babysit it. You want to just go off and smash more, So, yeah, it's fun. Sort of tactical choice, Do I go for it early or late? It's cool. So depending on culture and strength of the selected enemy, a reward trophy will be granted if successful. So basically there's trophies for, humans and elves and, whatever else. So that's kind of cool. And they all grant different benefits. And it depends on the strength rank of the unit, of the faction, basically. So if I'm attacking, say, the Reichland, and a strength rank between, 1 and 10, excuse me, you're going to get the best trophy available if it's strength rank 1 and 10. I think they actually hid those values, but in one version of the build it was available, though they may have also changed those thresholds. So, yeah, it's a funny one. But basically just, the higher their strength rank, or I guess the lower, because, 1 is the highest. I know. Anyway, so the lower the number, the better for that, and you get better rewards. So anyway, if you're successful, you only get the trophy at the end of the 20 turns. So if you raise the target, you don't get the trophy straight away. So bear that in mind. You have to finish it. So WAAAAAGH mobs. These armies are available for use for the duration of the Call to WAAAAAGH and will disperse when it ends. So just a second army gets attached to your army in a separate tab, which, you can see in any of the Greenskin Let's Plays I've been doing lately with early access. So WAAAAAGH mobs are not led by characters and cannot exist on their own. They will reinforce their primary army in all battles with the exception of interceptions and ambushes. So if you're ambushed, they won't turn up, because I guess they didn't realise. It makes sense. At the end of the Call to WAAAAAGH, the reputation meter will be reset to 0. So what's really nice about this is that it's a way for you to combat WAAAs if you are not playing as the Greenskins. So if you can see WAAAs coming, it makes total sense that the best way to take out these just insane swarms of Greenskins is to take them out piecemeal. Just ambush one force at a time and try and whittle them down. And so it feels incredibly thematic that they don't get the reinforcements there, because it gives you a really cool way to try and shut them down. You can just take out the leader of that army, and, the leading army, and the WAAA's going to leave, because it has no one to follow anymore. So it's just going to disappear, So I really like that. I think it's fantastic that is the system. I really like it. But it means you've got to be careful as well if you're using the... so it also means you have to take the longest route if you want to make sure you don't get intercepted. So if you're not confident that your main army can defeat, things that you're fighting, you need your WAAAAAGH, you're going to have to take the longest road. You can't just use the underway to, hop over a mountain, because you might get intercepted and lose that advantage. So, again, that's really cool. So it means that if they're going to rush you quickly by, hopping over a mountain or a forest to you, they're going to lose that advantage. They might just get wrecked because, they've got themselves intercepted. So it's a really cool sort of risk-reward thing, but sort of backwards. The more risk you do, the worse it is for you. So you have to be sort of careful and make sure that you're pushing all of your men, sort of on an easy path. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of interesting. It gives you more... There's more decision-making involved, basically. So a successful Call to WAAAAAGH. A successful Call to WAAAAAGH is achieved by either raising the targeted capital or owning it at the end of the duration. Depending on the success of the Call to WAAAAAGH, a specific trophy based on the performance of the WAAAAAGH will be granted. If a stronger foe is selected and defeated, the reward is greater. Trophies are flavoured around different racial groups, elves, humans, etc. That's almost exactly what I said, I think. A successful WAAAAAGH will also grant you some reputation straight away instead of leaving you at 0 to continue the momentum towards another future WAAAAAGH. Because if you're at 0, if you're between 0 and 20, I think, or 25, something like that, if your reputation is low, it's actually debuffs. You're not getting buffs to growth and public order. It's actually a negative value. So you're actually kind of screwed for a bit once a WAAAAAGH is finished, which I think is a nice way to balance it, because suddenly you might have gained a bunch of territory and now you've got to try and hold it without all the additional armies running around. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of cool. It means that, you sort of ebbs and wanes in an interesting way. the momentum of a campaign. So depending on the strength of the enemy faction you defeated, special WAAAAAAGH units will be awarded as well. So these are recruited like Regiment of Renown, basically. You get specific units like lava spiders, you know, which is very fun if you happen to be chilling by a volcano. It's very cool. So, WAAAAAAGH Confederation, similar to Norsca. If a Greenskin faction leader is beaten in battle, his faction can be absorbed through Confederation. So, yeah, you declare war on another Greenskin army, you take out their faction leader, you own them now. Simple. Alternatively, the leader can be executed if they aren't a legendary lord or released. So, again, that's kind of cool. So, yeah, pretty damn cool. I like that. So, WAAAAAGH Battle Ability Rework. Previously, Greenskin Lords had a WAAAAAGH Battle Ability, granting a variety of bonuses to their army, but the ability took too long to unlock in single player. Definitely. It was the end of the red chain. So you had to do all of your army upgrades before you could do the WAAAAAGH, which was like their main thing. Just a map-wide buff. And some Lords didn't even have it available to them. It was just bad. And in multiplayer quick battles, it encouraged the opponent to snipe the Greenskin Lord, thereby removing the ability from the battle, which was... yeah, again, just kind of annoying because they've got leadership problems anyway, so it just turned into, oh, I'm against Greenskins, Lord sniping it is. It really limited the amount of available tactics, and it made it a bit boring, frankly. So yeah, love it. I love that they've changed this. So to address this, WAAAAAGH is now an army ability. So every single Greenskin army just has one. It's not tied to any abilities or skills or anything like that. Just you have it, right? Because you're a Greenskin army, so of course you have it. So I love it. So, every entity engaged in melee combat, okay, ranged, doesn't matter, melee combat generates WAAAAAAGH points until the meter is filled and the ability is unlocked for use. The effects have changed from speed and charge buffs to bonus melee attack and damage, plus the immune to psychology effect. So you're not going to get terrified when you're feeling most fighty, right? Which is great. All of which are more useful for units already engaged in melee, for sure, absolutely. Because, yeah, it was a bit weird at other times, because speed and charge buffs are a bit pointless if everyone's having a fight, and you actually generated your WAAAAAAGH in combat with your Lord. So what your Lord had to be in combat to generate it, but everyone else had to quickly run backwards before the WAAAAAAGH running it is just silly. It's just, yeah, this is better. This is definitely better. So, the threshold for unlocking the ability scales with army size. So the more units you bring, the higher the threshold. It also encourages you to bring larger entity count units like goblins. More entities means you generate points quicker, because one goblin in combat is the same as one troll in combat. So the more bodies you bring, the more you'll be able to use the WAAAAAAGH, which is really cool. It doesn't mean that you're not going to want a balanced army and have the odd, like, tankier thing, because, you know, even with WAAAAAAGH proccing quite often, goblins aren't necessarily going to, you know, be the best thing to capitalize on it, right? So anyway, so generate points quicker, even if goblins don't always survive long enough to see the ability used. Bless them. In campaign, each legendary lord has their own unique WAAAAAAGH ability that either increases one of the existing effects or adds an additional effect to the normal WAAAAAAGH. So this is really fun. So basically, Grom has Grom's WAAAAAAGH, Azhag has Azhag's WAAAAAAGH, and they all do very different things. Grom's will actually heal a bunch of his, well, all of his army will get some healing when you trigger the WAAAAAAGH, which is very cool. Azhag will add fear and terror to all of your army, so you can immediately just like terror out the enemy army if you've been doing some good damage to him. And that's on top of the usual buffs of, you know, the melee attack and stuff. So it's really cool, really cool. So I love that. Sadly though, the unique abilities are not available in quick battles, which I think is a real pity. I think it's a real pity that that's the case, because I think it's quite kind of cool if you're picking your legendary lords. Sort of not just based for their skill set, but also their WAAAAAAGH set. You know, you might want to just get like, hell, you might get Azhag unmounted and just have him chilling in the back somewhere because you want to have the fear and terror against the army you're fighting, you know. You might not necessarily get him because you want a flying deathcaster, right? So you might just want it for the WAAAAAAGH, which is really cool. It's really cool, but sadly that's not the case. Hopefully that'll change. Hopefully. I'm hoping it will, but maybe not. Maybe it's an engine limit, like, sort of an engine limit. You know, they can't do it. Anyway, Greenskin Scrap. Oh god, yeah, there's this as well. All Greenskin factions have access to a new resource called Scrap. Again, I make a lot of use of this in the Grom and Azhag campaign, so feel free to go check those out. Reflecting their tendency to scavenge items from battles or settlements to inventively improve their gear. Scavenge scrap from battles or through occupation options. Use scrap. It's basically raising gets you scrap, I think, specifically for the occupation options anyway. Use scrap to unlock special technology nodes, and then use scrap to upgrade units. So how that works is, in the new tech tree, there will be certain techs which you spend 50 scrap on, and that unlocks the upgrades for a specific sort of grouping of units, whether it be like goblin units have upgrades now, or chariots and pump wagons, or whatever, right? Or spider units, whatever it is. Whatever the case may be. And so you unlock with scrap, and then you use scrap to do the individual upgrades on the individual units once you've unlocked those different techs. But different legendary lords get unique ones, which is really cool. Which I'm sure it'll say somewhere. Maybe not, actually. Maybe it doesn't say here. Anyway, but yeah, different legendary lords will have grant their armies access to various upgrades that aren't available elsewhere, which is pretty cool. Pretty damn cool. Azhag gets like magic weapons or something. It's not actually magic. It's like it doesn't add magic damage, but it makes the weapons do more damage, which is kind of cool. Anyway, so unit upgrades. Each recruited Greenskin unit can access a new panel where they can benefit from one of several unit upgrade options. Upgrading a unit will cost a certain amount of scrap. 20 seems to be the case for most things. But again, subject change. I'm still playing an early access build. Each unit in your army will be able to choose and keep an upgrade individually. Each unit will have several different upgrade options, improving units' existing strengths or adding new functionality. One key thing that it doesn't mention here is you can only get one upgrade per unit. So each unit gets a choice of a couple, 2 or 3 upgrades that they can have, but they can only have one. So bear that in mind. Okay, so Greenskin Legendary Lord abilities. Oh good, it does go into this stuff by the looks of it. Oh no, yeah, sort of. So we also looked at the Greenskins Legendary Lord's abilities and decided some of them needed some love. We added the following abilities to these characters. As you can see, that's a lot of things that have been added. And there's some really cool ones. So, Blood and Gore gets Best of the Best. New defensive ability when enemy characters are nearby. He also gets You're Next. Targeted slow and debuff on enemy characters. So this is great. So it actually slows down an enemy. And then you can mess them up, which is really, really cool. Also, the fact you got Best of the Best. Basically, it's just, if he's near enemy heroes or lords, he will be sturdier, and he can debuff the enemy and slow them down, so he can get nearer. So these are the big things with him. He thrives on hunting down lords and heroes. Okay, so same as ever, you just want to keep your lords and heroes away from Grimgore. Okay, but now he's way better at it, and because he can slow you down, it's easier for him to get to you. He's also got a lot more mass and is actually literally bigger than he used to be. So, Blood-forged armor as well. Magical explosion on himself that also grants Grimgore some armor for a short time, which is pretty cool. He'll jump into combat and then blow up, and a bunch of people end up flying off as pieces of meat, which is great. Azhag. Azhag's Ard Armor. Defensive buff for Azhag and allies nearby. He also gets Slagger's Slashers, which is a passive morale and offensive buff for Azhag and allies nearby. Which again, this sort of this ties into his more sort of strategic role, because he's got the crown of sorcery, the crown of sorcery, which has Nagash whispering in his ear, so he's more strategic. So the idea of him actually being able to, help nearby units is bizarre for a Greenskin, but he's got it to sort of help represent that, which I like. Snick, fermented fungi. Targeted debuff on enemy that can cause rampage, which again, pretty fun. He can just make people go insane with, sort of drunken shroom magic. And Night Goblin War Boss gets the fermented fungi as well, which is very cool. And the Boss's Loons, which summons some Night Goblin fanatics to spin into the enemy. So fanatics have actually been changed. So before, it used to be kind of like a wind spell was kind of the setup for it, and then, some loonies with, massive balls on chains would spin out and, hit a bunch of the enemy before just sort of like smashing themselves into the ground and exploding as meat. It was very weird. But anyway, still the same effect, but now you can actually target it at different directions. It's a directional thing that you can aim rather than it just coming from, like, what the game kind of figured was probably the center of your unit, though that could be wildly confusing if the unit was sort of spread out all over the place, because, some of the unit had been charged by Cav and had flown a mile or whatever, some weird nonsense. So anyway, it's really cool now that you can target it, and the same with the Goblin War Boss. He basically gets a wind spell that he can use, from quite short range, but you can choose the direction, and it's just a very cool thing to have. So the Orc War Boss, also available for other lords in campaign. Smash 'em faster. morale and offensive buff for himself and enemies nearby. So Smash and Faster basically takes over from the slot that used to be the WAAAAAAGH ability, so it's at the end of the red chain, which is pretty cool. And Great Goblin, Great Shamans get Don't Even Try It, which is a damage ability that targets an enemy, increases their ability cooldown. So it's basically like a sort of a freebie Arcane Unforging. So very cool. Goblin Big Bosses, they need stabbing. Defensive debuff for targeted enemy character. Also answers the age-old question, who needs stabbing? So, yeah, that's... Yeah, good. I'm glad that's finally been addressed. So yeah, very cool, very cool. Just nice sort of debuffs for him. Makes him feel a bit more like a sort of an assassin or something, because he can debuff enemy characters, which I really like. I really like that, because they do kind of fit that kind of role. They are for sort of, you bring a couple and it's a nice cheap way to sort of goon people, which is really fun. So yeah, that's really nice. It just helps encourage their particular role, which is perfect. You know, absolutely perfect. So Greenskin Campaign balance changes. Gore adjustments to initial army placements, and diplomacy to improve early game flow. Alright. Vague, but good. Improving early game flow always sounds good. Also, he gets new abilities, added skill tree. You know, stuff that's been mentioned above. Ambush at Thundering Fool's Quest. Battle now rewards a Night Goblin Shaman instead of a Goblin Big Boss. Good, because you want a Spellcaster early. You don't want a Goblin Big Boss early. When you're in Grimgore's army, he can do the damage. You know, you want a Spellcaster, so that's perfect. Azhag now leads a separate faction, the Bone Rattlers, starting in Carrick Ungor, which is very, very cool. So he's in the far north of the World's Edge Mountains. And I do have a video on that already if you want to go check that out, but it's a really cool starting location, and there's a few changes to the sort of the map up there as well, which is kind of cool, which you can see the first 5 minutes of that campaign. So it's very cool. But they've added new settlements, and yeah, it's cool. And it means he's fighting humans, which is kind of what he should be doing, you know? He's not going to be stuck doing the exact same things that Grimgore does in his campaign. He's got his own thing going on, which I love. So he also gets a unique skill line, and items have been revamped with new effects. Yeah, he's got plenty of new stuff. It's great. The first part of his Death Magic line no longer requires the Crown of Sorcery to unlock, so you don't have to get a quest item before you can use any magic, but that's just the first chunk of his Death Magic. For stuff like Fate Tribuna and the Purple Sun, you need the Crown of Sorcery. So all the basic spells you've got, right, you've got access to those. But, yeah, for the more advanced stuff, you need to get the Crown of Sorcery unlocked. He also has a different suitable climate of Temperate. So basically, the Empire. It's great. Also, diplomatic relations bonus to Vampire Counts factions has been improved to plus 40, and this also applies to Arkan the Black, because of course he's got ties to Nagash, and Nagash is in charge of all of these folks, whether they know it or not. Also, gains access to a unique building in Nagash Azar, which is fun. I don't know what that is. I haven't managed to get there with him. That's a long way from home for Azhag, but that's very cool. Also, Wurzag, Jungle, and Desert are now suitable, so it encourages him to move in different direction, because he starts in the Badlands, and yeah, I mean, if he goes he ends up just getting all the same territory as Grimgore would, but this way it means he's actually going south into you know, sort of fighting Tomb Kings and stuff. So that's really cool. I really like that. So also, while Frozen is now uninhabitable, even Wurzag's vigorous dancing can't make up for his lack of clothing. Fair. Also, you get some unique skills as well, and adjustments to initial army placement to improve early game flow. Do love a good early game flow. Snikch, adjustments to initial army placement to improve early game flow, always good to hear, and new unique skills. Cool. His unique skills are pretty good. He's got a new poison thing for dripping tips. It actually is a damage over time poison, which is really cool. And you also get that for Night Goblin War bosses as well. They get Snikch's, what was it? Snikch's Death Juice, I think it's called. So, very cool. So, it's nice to see his sort of penchant for poison is a little bit better than other people's, you know, mild hobby, I suppose. Anyway, all factions. Raiding camp starts no longer requires movement points to enter. This I really like. I think this is really fun. The fact for all factions is kind of crazy, but the factions that are, you know, the factions that raid should be able to raid, right? For me, it's just the fact that as they're running through wherever they're running through, they're just smashing stuff, right? It's just at the end of their move, you decide, yeah, they smash stuff. That's how I see that. Kind of working, but I love it. I think it's really fun because the cost of raiding is too much, because it often is the difference between attacking a settlement in 1 turn to like attacking it in 2 turns. And you'd rather just take the settlement before backup arrives or whatever. So raiding is usually costly in ways that are just aggravating. So this way you still get the benefits of being able to raid if you are a raiding faction. But you're not having to sort of forego those other benefits of actually progressing the campaign, So I love that. I think it's a really nice change. So it makes those campaigns just feel more thematic again, which is good. So general bug fixes and improvements. So yeah, I think we'll go over the general ones this episode. Actually, you know what? Because there's a bunch of campaign balance changes as well. So we're going to do that next episode, actually. So we've gone over all the Greenskin rework stuff this episode, which is nice. And yeah, there's still a heck of a lot to do. So yeah, expect another one. But hey, nice short bite-sized things. I like bite-sized things. That's good, right? Anyway, so yeah, I guess I'll catch you in a bit. I don't know when I'm posting all these, but hey, there'll be another one of these at some point. So guys, if you enjoyed this, comment, like, subscribe, and be sure to tune in again for more patch notes and everything else. All the things. I'll see you later, guys. Have a good one.